You're live.
Good evening. Hey, Kathy, how are you? Sorry, we're joining a little late. We had some technical difficulties all getting on and getting everybody straight, but we are all here now and going live at 6:15. Want to welcome everybody to this evening's Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee. It's been a couple of weeks since we got together. Our last meeting, Captain Hubbard and I, there was a few different conflicts for folks on the panel, and so Captain Hubbard and I had a brief meeting. We're blessed to have a wonderful appearance by Chair Emerita Regina Jackson. Made an appearance last week, and we were able to cover a few things. But I wanted to appreciate Captain Hubbard for sending out the letter that you're going to be sending to the chief. I know you've worked on that and had sent that to all of us for review. And so there's that, and a couple of the class one couple class ones I think we still need to discuss with this group here, if I'm not mistaken. Final edits on some that were just taking a little bit longer discussion. But also just wanted to appreciate you for that letter. I think it was well written. It kind of captures what we're doing here in this group. I'm musing over some thoughts about it right now. So maybe at some point in today's meeting or I'll email you some maybe some feedback or some thoughts around the letter as well too. But if I'm not sure if were we going to review that today with the group.
I think that's best. Yeah, we can start with the letter.
Okay, cool.
Right. Let me share my screen here. All right. Okay. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So the last update to this was on March 31st. I'll go ahead and read it, and because I don't know if everyone we discussed it last time, but not everyone was here. The Oakland Police Commission Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee is pleased to provide this status update on our ongoing work to revise the Oakland Police Department Manual of Rules and Discipline Matrix. This collaborative effort represents our shared commitment to ensuring that departmental standards align with contemporary best practices while reinforcing our core values of community service and accountability. In fall of 2024, the Oakland Police Commission established the Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee to review and provide guidance on the Oakland Police Department's Manual of Rules and Discipline Matrix. Our mandate is to ensure the MOR's matrix and associated policies reflect contemporary industry standards for progressive discipline with a focus on fairness, consistency, transparency, and accountability in the disciplinary process. The committee brings together commission members, community representatives, and Oakland Police Department personnel in a collaborative effort to strengthen the foundation of our disciplinary framework. This diverse composition ensures that multiple perspectives inform our recommendations, creating a more robust and community-centered approach to accountability. We are pleased to present you with the completion of the first phase of our project, a comprehensive review and proposed revisions of all Class 1 Manual of Rules sections. The attached document represents countless hours of careful deliberation, thoughtful discussion, and meticulous review by our committee members. Our weekly meetings, held nearly every Wednesday evening for 2 hours, have been characterized by rigorous analysis and constructive dialogue. The proposed Class 1 sections reflect our commitment to establishing clear standards that uphold the highest levels of professional conduct while recognizing department personnel's complex challenges. After completing the Class 1 sections, the committee will now proceed to the second phase of our project, reviewing and revising the Class 2 sections of the Manual of Rules. After the completion of all sections of the proposed Manual of Rules, we will begin our work on the Discipline Matrix. Throughout this process, we remain guided by the principles outlined in the preamble, emphasizing self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and effective communication as essential attributes for all department personnel. These qualities are fundamental to fostering a culture where ethical conduct and accountability guide decision-making at every level. The ad hoc committee looks forward to reviewing the attached Class 1 Manual of Rules and welcomes your feedback. We are excited to move to the next phase of this important project and believe that our collaborative efforts will ultimately strengthen the relationship between the Oakland Police Department and the community it serves. Revising the MORs and discipline matrix represents our shared commitment to creating a framework where mutual trust, respect, and accountability form the foundation of effective community policing. Working together can ensure that the Oakland Police Department remains a trusted guardian of public safety. All right. Any thoughts on that?
I really like it. I have thoughts. I feel like my brain is too fried to try to articulate them right now. I think part of I like it. I want to see if in one of these sections, maybe around where we talked about community centered perspective to accountability, or there you go, community centered approach to accountability. And the background and purpose. I guess for me, I think another, whether it was an unintended consequence maybe of this exercise in a way, has been for the commission, community, and OPD to all get on the same page around how we see discipline in a way. Like, I think part of how we've had these discussions, it helps us like learn what OPD sees in these instances and examples of how these things may go awry or may have a procedural misstep in some places, or where, where there are challenges in carrying out or moving forward with a certain type of policy or procedure. And it helps get community, OPD, and commission all on the same page. I say this to say because it hasn't been lost on me, and it's kind of haunted me, Captain, ever since there's been public discourse at our commission meetings around the discipline process being weaponized. And that's has sparked several. I've gotten public feedback. I've gotten letters to my emails around it, right? And I think part of the beauty of what we've done here is that we're learning about each other, learning the different community, commission, and police lens of three different ways of looking at the same policy, dissecting it, helping it make sense for all of us to, help it make sense, right? Make it make sense. So that when it comes to the point where if there ever is contention around a particular disciplinary outcome, right, and then there are some levels of either negotiation, arbitration, or decisions commission has to make, at least now it's coming from a place that of like a foundation that we all have an understanding that we're not just coming from three different perspectives, right, or two different perspectives, and then looking at a case together for the first time, but we've had extensive conversations around various scenarios, and then we see a case together, right? And by having this exercise, it built up that muscle to understand where we're coming from, so that hopefully we could get closer on how we see discipline and where we end up landing, right? So that we're not coming into one of those meetings so far apart with different perspectives, right? So I said a lot of words there, and I think I'm just trying to capture kind of, again, what I've found to be a little bit of an unintended consequence of this meeting, a good one, a really good one, is that like we got to do some team building and learning about one another, learning different perspectives, so that we could reach a common place where it comes to discipline and a common understanding.
I got it. Thank you. Yeah, I will. I understand what you're saying, and I will make that change. I think this is a good place to put it.
Okay, cool. Kathy has a question in the chat. It says, were all the changes the committee made included in the final, quote, final document? I would appreciate a copy being forwarded to my email. Thank you. Kathy, is this the final document? Are you referring to the final document of the letter to the chief?
No, the documents, the document that we worked on the that we've been working on in the past.
Oh yeah. So the summary of all the edits we made of all the class ones that we are going to include with this letter.
Oh, okay. All righty. Great. And a copy will be forwarded to all of the committee members, correct?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I'm asking that's the document you're talking about, right? The actual,
yes.
Yeah.
Right. The class one changes, the changes we made to the class one document.
Yep. We have a couple more that we're going to cross today, and then Captain, yeah. So I'm assuming to Kathy's question, we'll get a copy of that final product that's being sent to the chief along with this final letter, right?
That's right. The document I'm going to send them is going to include track changes. It's going to look like a draft just because I need him to see how we came to the.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I would expect that you would include the track changes.
Excellent. Thank you. Great question,
Okay.
Kathy.
Thanks.
All right. But other than that, I didn't have any other particular feedback on the letter. I think it captures a lot of the essence of our work. I really appreciate your words and thoughtfulness on this, Captain.
Thank you. Anything else on the letter? Okay. All right. We have 2 more class 1s. Last time we met, I still had it in somewhat of a rough draft, so I cleaned it up. This is personal preferment 38498. So as you recall, the definition, let me just pull that up just so you can see the difference here. It only says members and employees shall not seek the influence or intervention of any person outside the department for purposes of personal preferment, advantage, transfer, advancement. I think we were all confused by it. I don't think I've ever seen this sustained or even investigated for that matter. So I just expanded on this. So first, the definition in general prohibition. Personal preferment refers to the appropriate use of inappropriate use of external influence to gain personal advantage within the department. Members and employees shall not seek the influence or intervention of any person outside the department for purposes of personal preferment, advantage, transfer, discipline, accountability, avoidance, or advancement. Prohibition. External influence activities. Members and employees shall not engage in the following activities: soliciting elected officials, community leaders, or other influential persons to intercede on their behalf regarding departmental matters, using family connections, personal relationships, or political affiliations to secure preferential treatment within the department, requesting or allowing external parties to contact department leadership on their behalf for internal departmental matters, leveraging media contacts or threatening media exposure to influence personal decisions, using membership in professional, social, or fraternal organizations to circumvent established department processes and procedures. Members and employees shall follow established department procedures for requests, transfers, promotions, and addressing grievances, utilize the official chain of command for all professional matters, submit formal appeals or grievances through proper internal channels as outlined in department policy and applicable collective bargaining agreements, direct external inquiries regarding department matters to appropriate department representatives. Some exceptions: this policy does not prohibit legal representation through established due process proceedings, union representation as provided by collective bargaining agreements, equal employment opportunity, complaint procedures, and whistleblower protections as provided by law. Oh, we need to put in there city charter. So a lot more expansive. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, Captain, and this is specific to external influences, right? Is there a section that covers internal, or is that just something totally different? Like if you have a personal relationship with somebody internally and you still kind of go about inappropriately using that to leverage or avoid discipline or get a promotion.
Yeah, I see. I hear what you're saying. The purpose.
But I was right to catch on that it was very specific to external influences, right?
It is, yeah, you're right, not seek, it's, outside the department.
Okay, yeah.
So,
So I guess this reads, I mean, this is the expanded version is very straightforward to me in terms of like that outside influence, but is there a need for all these same reasons to also name an internal influence that could also influence on all these different ways?
if we're gonna, there's a couple thoughts on this. The first one is if there's an internal affairs investigation and I sought treatment internally or externally, that's a different section where we talk about obstruction and interference with the internal affairs process. So that is covered elsewhere. But if I go to, let's say, a deputy chief and I say, hey, I'm looking to get promoted, would you mind bending the ear of the chief to help me out? I mean, I'm trying to think if like ethically that crosses the line, because it also, like the person who actually does that, like, hey, I think this guy is good or gal's good. I want to see them get promoted. Let me put a good word in with the chief and they work here. I mean, it's almost like we kind of expect that in some of our leaders, right? As long as they're not being untruthful against someone else to get that other person ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the part I'm struggling with because it sounds like internally there may be some natural ways where it is appropriate, right? It's like, hey, you've been my supervisor for 3 years, put in a good word. I'm going for this promotion. Like you know how good I am, right? Or that type of stuff. You want to advocate for yourself. You want to list your references, or I don't know, like how much of that internal promotion process like takes account into like interviews of your supervisors or things like that, right? So I don't think any of that stuff's appropriate. But I guess to the example you just gave is if you were like, hey, that time, that I got in trouble with you, I'm up for promotion, just ixnay on mentioning that incident, all right? Or you know what I'm saying? Like if it gets into that messy area, then it does become inappropriate, where this type of stuff would apply. But I mean, I guess it's tough. It's similar to when we first had this discussion. We're talking about new hires, right? Like new hires, you want outside influences to references and reference checks and vouch for your character and things like that. I don't know. It was just a question because it's the outside the department just stood out for me, and I was like, oh well, does that apply for inappropriate behavior in these ways inside the department? Which you're right, it would trigger other more serious immoral violations, right?
I mean, I could see it like if I'm on the other end of this, though, people do get upset over like, oh, I know that they're good friends with so and so, and that person's going to put a good word in for them to get promoted, or they got transferred because they play golf with that commander every weekend. That would rub me the wrong way. So I can see the other side to that also. Let me
Well, the only reason I'm being sensitive to that because obviously task 45, right, and the disparities of discipline and promotions, and like I want it to be based on, like, if I'm getting Captain Hubbard to vouch for me, it's based off of my merits and experience, not because we hang out at the same bar every Tuesday night.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, let me think about this some more on how that. I mean, recusals, that is a big issue that came up in the recent meeting with the judge about relationships and how that influences certain things here. So there definitely is, we have a separate policy on it. That's how important it is. So I can see some overlap here, but yeah, let me put some more thought into it. I'll come back to this.
And for the record, Captain Hubbard and I do not have drinks on Tuesday nights. That was simply hypothetical.
Yes, very hypothetical.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's see. Okay. All right, I'll come back to that. The last one is retaliation accountability supervisors. This is expanded. supervisors, commanders, and managers shall. Let me just change one. Supervisors, commanders, and managers shall be held accountable for failing to report retaliatory behavior among their subordinates. If it is determined that the supervisor, commander, or manager knew or should reasonably have known the retaliatory behavior was occurring, reports must be made in accordance to DGO M3. That's our complaint taking policy. Supervisors, commanders, and managers are responsible for providing an atmosphere in the workplace in which department personnel are free from retaliation. Supervisors, commanders, and managers shall ensure that employment actions are appropriate and not motivated by or in response to a member employee engaged in a protected activity. Retaliatory actions include but are not limited to unfavorable changes in work assignments or schedules, unwarranted disciplinary actions or performance evaluations, exclusion from training or professional development opportunities, hostile work environment or intimidation tactics, interference with promotion or advancement opportunities. Supervisors, commanders, managers shall document all complaints of retaliation reported to them, maintain records of actions taken to address retaliation concerns, follow up with affected personnel to ensure retaliatory actions have ceased. I probably need to fix this. I don't really like it as I read it out loud. I mean, it's an automatic referral to internal affairs. So I want it more to read as like, they should do a preliminary inquiry and gather. They should just do evidence fact finding in that stage and turn it over to internal affairs. They can't then address it per se, or they can't follow up until the investigation is complete. So I'll have to fix that. So unfortunately, retaliation complaints are pretty heavy. I mean, they happen quite often. A lot of it, I think, is a statement of the health of an organization when one who's on the other end of discipline can accept the discipline and move on and learn from it versus saying, well, you're only doing that because you don't like me and then file a retaliation complaint. But on the other end of that is also how discipline is administered and how one is trained and mentored and how it's delivered, to where one does not feel like they're a victim of retaliation. So it goes both ways, but yeah, we do get a lot of these complaints. Okay, I mean, that wraps up all the class ones. Any questions, but minus those two things I need to fix?
No, I mean, in terms of timing though, I guess we looks like the letter's pretty much finalized. Once we finish these last two things and everything at that point, we'll be ready to fire off to the chief.
Yes, along with the other thing is well, it's part of the letter, but it's not just the manual rule sections because we did do the preamble. A bigger, I guess, we also revamped the vision and mission statement, which has bigger impacts just because there are other policies where that affects. So I would like the chief to spend a little bit more time on that. In my opinion, it's really setting him up for success just because he has not revised that since he's taken over. Maybe he didn't feel the need, which is fine. And what we did was very minor edits, but it did make it more relevant to today's policing world and what we're doing.
Okay.
So I do want to emphasize that to him that he is taking a critical look at that also. So yes, that will be a separate document being sent to him.
Excellent.
Okay. And then for class twos, if we're ready to jump into that, I picked 5 just to get us through tonight. These are somewhat, they are common per se, but they all are in kind of the same family, if you will. So we'll start with general conduct 31403. Members and employees shall conduct themselves at all times in such a manner as to reflect favorably upon themselves, the city, the department, and the police service. Whether on or off duty, members and employees shall avoid any conduct that brings disrepute to the department or impairs its efficient and effective operation. I can tell you right now that this is a more common one that, at least when I came to IA, that we have been adding, and I'll give you an example. An officer has an interaction with the police off duty that may result in an arrest or detention or something that then comes back to OPD. General conduct is usually added as a complaint, regardless of the underlying factor for the stop. And the reason why is because if that agency knew that that officer worked for us and it led them to affected detention or arrest, then there's an automatic argument for disrepute. But the challenge with this is, what does disrepute really mean? As in, what if it never makes its way into the media, or what if it stops there? You know, the watch commander for this agency calls our watch commander and then it's done. Is that bringing disrepute to the organization? So I know that there's a lot of discussion internally right now about what does disrepute really mean.
Did you just hit us with, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, did it really make a sound?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's to me, if you look at disrepute, it's like, did you bring embarrassment to the department? But it's like, who's the victim there? Is it the chief? Does he or she have to be embarrassed? Is it the officers on behalf of the other officer? Do they have to be embarrassed? You know, it's just one of those like philosophical discussions we've been having of what is real disrepute. If it makes its way in the media, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
You know, but there are a lot that just doesn't. That doesn't, you know, officer gets arrested or detained, and it's like, okay, well, it ended there. I mean, there's an investigation and they're going to get sustained, but general conduct bring disrepute, you know, that's debatable.
Well, if I may,
Please.
The intent of a policy like this is supposed to be that broad. It's not intended to find people and indict them for this, and then have a lot of folks, a lot of officers up in discipline for it. That's not the design of it. The design is that we're supposed to, OPD in every professional organization is to have a standard of behavior that you generally understand what it is. Okay, you're a police officer, you got to be dressed appropriately in a clean uniform. You can't be drinking on the job. You know, you can't be driving fast, 90 miles an hour on city streets. You can't get out cursing out innocent old ladies at the supermarket. These are the obvious things. So that's why that's there. Not to find someone guilty and then find some way how we can punish them. We should say, look, we have a standard. We have a decorum. We have an ethical standard, and we want to stay on the upside of that standard. That's why you have these kind of sections in here. So I wouldn't change anything about this. I think every so often, OPD ought to look at itself, and every professional organization ought to look at it itself and see, are they being ethical? Are they being courteous? Are they being dignified? That's why you have that that section in there.
Mhm.
So I don't know why you would want to change any of that. You're never going to find one or two behaviors that, okay, if you do it this way, then that's disrepute. And you don't have enough paper to put out all the other scenarios that could be, you know, disrespectful, if you're following me. You know, there's so many different ways that a professional organization can fall below its standard, and every year or every period of time, you know, new things come up in society that that's not in here. So this is just like a catch-all.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well said. I would just, we use this as a guide of completing investigations, and I'll use the other side of the argument. If an officer or member gets arrested, but there's never mention of them working for the Oakland Police Department, there's never anything about like, hey, can you cut me a deal? It's just Brian Hubbard's off duty, drunk in public, gets detained by an officer. Did I bring disrepute because I swore an oath that even in my personal life, it will be unsullied, is the actual phrase.
Okay.
So that's the other side of this that we look at in internal affairs. Like, okay, well, you're right. Nothing attached you to Oakland, true, but we also look at you just general conduct off duty, and did you behave as like we taught you and what we expect of you?
Okay. I'm sorry, I got to take this call by a physician. Alpha.
I think we want to pause. Mute.
Yeah, I got a text from a lady
One sec.
saying again.
Micah, can you mute him?
Yes,
Thank you.
give me one sec. Okay,
Thanks.
got
Thanks. Chair Garcia, do you understand what I'm saying here? Is like, this is a hot issue. This is why I put this as number one. I want to start off strong with the class twos. We really struggle with this section. Because one can argue, it's like, well, I'm not at work. I didn't bring in disrepute. Was acting like a fool off duty. Can you really sustain me for general conduct?
That's, yeah. I definitely hear what you're saying. I kind of go back to a cultural thing and kind of setting the tone from the top, right? I often try to draw a parallel line to my role as a leader in an organization, as a director, as the buck stops with me. And if I have violence interrupters that are getting arrested, or things that are unbecoming of like the type of behavior both on and off the clock that I expect of them to carry themselves in their lives as examples and beacons and models of the community, whether things go public or not, whether things are known or not. If I go into a staff meeting and I know 3 of my 10 violence interrupters have been arrested over the last month, whether it's public or not, whether my funders know it or not, I'm going to go into that staff meeting and be like, you mofos are bringing disrepute around our organization because I know it. And I have to go to bed at night as the leader of this organization, knowing that you guys are bringing disrepute to the organization, whether people know about it or not.
Right.
I know about it as a leader, and I expect better from my organization. So that's the part I'm struggling with a little bit right now, because I hear what you're saying. I hear the argument, right? It makes sense. But I also feel like leadership knows, and I can't go to bed at night knowing that I got people in the community that are supposed to be serving the community that are causing harm in the community. And whether it's known or not, whether my funders know that about that or not, I have to do something about it because they're not holding the standard of the general conduct that I expect from my staff.
And that's why you're the leader. The disrepute is not insulting you, it's insulting the society. You are the gatekeeper, you are the guard, you are the no pun intended, you're the policeman here. You're supposed to manage this. So if it's known or not in the public, that's why you're there. So you are the strainer, you catch it first, and then you're supposed to act. But ultimately, the disrepute is to the society. So we can't, society is so broad, so large, we can't articulate every instance where someone can bring disrepute. So you got to have a broad statement like this, and you should defend it. You shouldn't let people challenge it like, hey, what do you mean by that? Just by asking that question makes me think that you have an ethical problem. What do you mean? You don't understand what disrepute or embarrassment or insulting or offending people, everything short of a criminal act. You don't understand what that behavior is. In other words, in order for you to understand what disrepute is, I have to give you all of the examples that may be disrepute. Then you don't belong to, you shouldn't be a police officer. You should have, before you become a police officer, you should have a well-defined code of ethics, a well-defined self-character, integrity, that you know what behavior is rude, disrespectful, insulting, mean-spirited. You should know those things. So the fact that I don't want to muddy that up, police officers ought to be on their toes. They ought to be respectful. They ought to not be mean just because they can. They ought not be use violence just because they can. They should know how to walk that tightrope. And it should not be because, well, I don't want the chief to find out, or I don't want the sergeant to find out. I don't want the lady across the street to find out, to see me acting like this. Off duty or on duty.
And it's the responsibility of the leader to hold in confidence and be a steward of that public trust, whether
That's
they
my
know it or
point.
not.
That's my
Still
point.
holding that line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's never, the key is never, are we insulting the chief? No, the chief is not the key here. It's the public that we want to make sure we're on the good side of.
Correct.
And the chief is just, the governor, along with his staff, starting at sergeants and, all the way up. You should be starting at beat buddies and all the way up, to be honest. Because if you're on a beat and you see somebody doing something that's short of illegal, but just rude, just poor manners. How about throwing trash out of a car? Nobody saw you, but the lady on the street saw you in the drive down in a marked car throwing, McDonald's bag of outside the car on the street. Hey, man, that's horrible. And if your beat buddy sees you doing that, they ought to be talking to you about it.
Okay, so I'm hearing no change to this section.
I don't know how you can improve it, Brian. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah. I don't know if I can improve it. If I were to change maybe one word, it's this one, and because this makes it sound like it has to be me, the city, the department, and the police service, as opposed to any one of these four things.
So how would you, what word would you say? Put it
I would just say, or the police service.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then it's like, if there's no city connection, no OPD connection, but Brian Hubbard did something off duty that doesn't reflect my values, then this would be applicable. It's one of the four.
So it doesn't have to be both of them in order for it to be good.
Yeah.
I get it.
And Captain, I think, I kind of take this as similar to the last one we were just looking at, right? The retaliation piece. You made a comment of, it's a reflection of the health of the department, right? You don't want to be handing out discipline and then people just automatically, they don't own it or take accountability. They just automatically like, oh, that's because they don't like me, or they're retaliating against when they file a retaliation thing, right? We don't want folks to be like, well, nobody found out about it, so technically I didn't bring disrepute and it's not a general conduct, right? And so it's like, I don't know, it feels like it's kind of the same thing, it's like it doesn't matter if people found out or not. Like it's the conduct was still there. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is 31404, which is this one, but I'm going to show you one thing here. So we already addressed the class 1 version of this, which is harassment and discrimination. This is a 30-day suspension and termination for the first one, first offense. The second offense is automatic termination, but there's also a class 2 section for this. And this is unprofessional conduct in violation of AI 71, which is our administrative instruction for the city. Okay. The class 1 is specific to harassment and discrimination, but the class 2, I know this is somewhat confusing, and I'll go down and read it and maybe we can pick it apart, but it has less penalties with it. So the first offense is counseling and training all the way to suspension 30, which I don't like these broad ranges. It's very difficult to kind of navigate. The second one is written reprimand all the way to a 30-day suspension, and the third offense is a 30-day suspension and termination. Okay, so we're now going to talk about 31404, the class 2 version of this. But you'll see this is where it gets confusing, is there's no difference in the definition. So what happens as an investigator, if they're investigating this, they would first determine if it's a class 1 or a class 2, and then let that investigation guide them accordingly. So I'll go ahead and read this and we can discuss further. Members and employees shall treat all persons with courtesy and respect. The department has a zero tolerance policy for harassment and discrimination against members, employees, and persons on the basis of race, religion, national origin, marital status, age, sex, sexual orientation, ancestry, physical or mental disability, or medical condition. The department prohibits conduct that violates the specified city administrative instruction. Any person or employee who harasses or discriminates against another member, employer, any person, or engages in any inappropriate workplace conduct that violates city administrative instruction 71 shall be subject to severe disciplinary action, including discharge from this city service. Any member employee who has knowledge that another member employee has engaged in harassment, discrimination, or inappropriate conduct that violates a specific city administrative instruction is strictly charged with the responsibility for reporting that conduct in accordance with the provisions of 31448. This is the reporting section that we already discussed. Yeah. So basically, it's either harassment or discrimination for the class 1. If the answer is no, then it falls into the class 2, assuming that it fits within the umbrella of administrative instruction 71.
Do you have that so we can look at the wording on administrative instruction 71?
Is there a case where it's not a class 1, but it's also not violates city administrative 71? Or if it's not class 1, then it pretty much automatically always going to violate that instruction.
Ask that question again, please.
Is there a way that it is not, first you determine, you said it's a class 1, right? And if it's not class 1, then you'll determine if it violates City Administrative Instruction 71. Is there a time that it's not a class 1, but it doesn't violate that City Administrative Instruction?
Right. It would just be general conduct towards other, like rudeness. Let's say I'm rude to someone, but it's not because of a protected class. It's not because I'm harassing or discriminating them. It's just straight rudeness. So that would be a different section. When we went through the AI 71, let me see if I can find this. This is it's quite long, but I'll I'm just trying to give an example. All right, so let's just use this one as an example where on my locker I post something obscene. Okay, but it doesn't it's not, I mean, I don't know, harassment is like, I think pretty broad where it could fit into that category, but let's say it's not demeaning against a particular race. It's just generally offensive. So that would be an example of a class 2. It would be a close tie though, because let's say someone does say, "Hey, I'm offended by this because of X, Y, Z," and they're within that described in this policy, then one can argue also for the class 1. But I'll just keep it for what it is. Some obscene poster that I have outside my locker, absent any discrimination or harassment specific allegation, it would be or could be a violation of AI 71. So therefore it's a class 2 section.
Yeah.
This one's confusing, as you can hear me struggling to say this, just because I really try to look at the history behind this. I don't really know why they created a class 2 section, because as you read AI 71, I mean, this is the city policy. The entire thing, the theme behind it is harassment and discrimination. So it really becomes confusing for the investigator when they're looking into this.
I think we ought to eliminate it then and just keep class 1s. I mean, that ought to be our recommendation. It seems like some of these situations that you've just described, I can't prove this, but maybe a design, maybe a poison pill in the disciplinary section, so that nobody can get disciplined. If it creates confusion, then let's eliminate what's confusing about it. Just keep one that's clear and precise. How many of these do you get in just the estimate, let's say in a year's time?
Well, we get a lot of allegations, but the actual sustain rate is relatively low. I mean,
I'm more concerned about the allegations. I mean, is it 2 a month, 500 a month?
for sustains.
No, Allegations.
Oh, allegations. It's
Yeah,
almost every
sustains
day.
it takes on a whole other can of worms. I'm just talking about how many of these do you get where people feel like they've been harassed or disrespected.
I mean, we get a couple a week easily. I mean, just because it's always a lot of them are attached to arrests. You know, like,
That's normal.
well, yeah, I mean, but it's you know, one thing is like it's not just them saying, "Hey, you're harassing me," right? We ask them to be more specific. Like, what is it that the officer did that made you feel harassed? But we do get a lot of these allegations. Yes.
Well, what's the argument for a class 2? Does it make the muster?
Yeah, it's it was to me it's usually the default is class 1. The investigation surrounds a class 1. The person felt like they were harassed, right? Based on their class, protected class. If again, I'll go back to it. If the answer is no to that, then the question is there a class 2 version of that? And if no, then it would be okay, just general conduct. Like I'll give you an example. I'm being very unclear here. The officer was rude to me because of my race. Okay. So we have a conduct allegation, but based on AI 71. So we asked them, okay, what is it about their rudeness that made you feel X, Y, and Z, or what exactly did they say? And they're unclear, like, oh, I just felt like the officer talked to me differently. Okay, so we could remove the AI 71 aspect to this and then just look at the straight rudeness. So that's kind of how we break it up to where we can really get to the heart of what the complaint actually is.
Okay. So we do have a section that covers an officer being rude to someone, but not necessarily against someone who's a part of a protected class.
Yeah, it would be the next one. We're going to talk about conduct towards others, demeanor, which is a very
Is that a class 2?
It is a class 2.
Well, maybe that's all we need.
Yeah. So
If it's not a protected class, then it was rude to him, under the next section. Demeanor.
So the way I see this is, let me go back to this. Sorry about that. All right. We have conduct towards others, harassment, discrimination, and then we have unprofessional conduct in violation of AI 71. If we combine these and make it one section, we're just saying violating AI 71, basically. I think without speculating too much, obviously harassment and discrimination has heavier weight. If we were to combine these, and I'll give you another example of what's in AI 71, this one. So let's say an officer's in the gym working out in the police department and they have, they're listening to music that is heavy on what's described here. So that violates this policy. Does that carry the same weight as an officer who is sexually harassing someone?
No.
Right. So that's why a class 2 has some benefit, because you're able to carve out serious issues, but not as serious as harassment and discrimination.
So how many of these audio conduct cases do you get a year on average?
I have not seen any.
Yeah, so we don't want to make a policy based on something that never happens. I mean, to me, that audio conduct ought to be saying, it ain't even a violation. It's just turn that off, man.
Yeah. Well, Yeah,
Simple as
this-
that.
This is the city policy though, so I can't,
Yeah, I hear you.
but. So that's why the dangers of saying, well, if you violate AI 71, you're now in this category where you can get terminated basically.
Well, I wouldn't want to terminate anybody for something like that, but I can see why it's there. But we ought to have the kind of it seems like whoever is doing in judgment of these things ought to have the latitude to say, yeah, this is not a fireable offense. This is something we just, we're gonna give you some counseling on and move on. Turn your music down.
Yeah. So if I may, just because it makes more sense as I'm thinking out loud. I think what throws people off is we have AI 71 here, but not up here. Both of these have AI 71 implications in it. This one carries more weight than this one. I could take a shot at like creating actually two sections. So if you go back to 314.04, you see how it's all jumbled up into one.
Yeah.
Okay, I argue it should be two. And the class 1 section emphasizes the heavier allegations within AI 71 to include, racial discrimination, all those, the heavier stuff. And then the class 2 version of it could just be AI 71 violations, but not as severe.
You will see again, the danger of that is that then the more egregious acts are then argued down and forced down into class 2 acts when they really should be class 1s. That's why we are under consent decree right now, because of that tendency, that trend or trait within the Oakland Police Department. I hear what you're trying to say, but I don't want racial and sexual and homophobic harassment.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to discipline anybody ever, be all pushed down into class 2s. That's the danger of what we're doing. It ought to be a way that these protected class harassment cases stay class 1s no matter what, and then let the facts on the ground or in the case determine what kind of discipline someone gets. That's what some of us, well, I am at least, is concerned about.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, we're here because the reluctance of the people who should be doing the discipline in corrective actions are not doing it. In fact, they bend themselves into a pretzel to make sure that no one is disciplined. And that's what we're here for. That's why we are in existence. And so we don't want to, in our process of trying to do what is right and best for everybody, end up creating a gaping hole through which we cannot ever discipline anyone when they deserve it.
Yep.
So we got to keep saying that over and over. I know I keep saying it over and over. Kathy keeps saying it over and over. Marcia keeps saying it over and over. And the reason why we keep saying it over and over is because we are convinced that if we don't hold a line on this kind of thing, water may just go to its own level. We're dealing with a culture here that's been in existence for decades upon decades, and it's because the reluctance to hold people ethically responsible.
Well, I support then getting rid of the class 2 section. And the other things like the audio conduct that you see here possibly as just as a mitigating factor.
Yeah. Why, why should a guy get 2 days off for playing his music loud? That has, that his music is loud and he's not in control of the playlist. The radio station is. His radio just happens to be on. And then something is played. Now, if he comes in with his own CD and he has control of all of that, those are the factors I'm talking about. But if a guy just got his radio on and some of the language comes on, I hear it all the time. Then, you know, hey man, turn that out. You don't play that in here. That's discipline, corrective action, right?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
how we hold each other accountable. It doesn't have to have a sergeant. It can be a senior officer or, you know, hey, young fella, hey, turn that down. We don't do that here. That's it. That's discipline.
Yep. Got it. So I am,
Captain, but I guess where I'm confused around is the city administrative instruction 71, because that's city policy, right?
Right.
So let's say in that scenario where, because I totally agree, like if there's coaching opportunities and you go like, hey buddy, turn that down, this and that, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't need to go down this wasting everybody's time going through an administrative burden and they're, you know, like again, I do lean towards, especially on the day-to-day, to be able to use those opportunities for just coaching, quick corrective actions and not having to like, oh, this case. The only thing that I guess where I'm just being cautious of this administrative instruction is I pat you in the back and say, hey, young fellow, you know, turn that down. It's not appropriate. Cool. He never does it again. Right. 2 days later, somebody could have filed something with the city saying that person's music offended me and right. And then now you're getting in trouble because the city policy is superseding that coaching opportunity. Right. Just because you couldn't control if somebody felt offended and filed something with the city.
I think that's mitigating what you just said. You know, in the when the incident went down in my presence, I made the decision that this is the level of discipline or corrective action that was necessary. Now, somebody else can be offended and disagree with me 100%, and that's fine. But I'm the one who did what I thought was right at the time. That doesn't mean I did anything wrong. It actually means that, well, if they say, well, you know, Sergeant Lyles, you should have done more. Okay, next time I will. But at this particular time, I thought that that's what it required. And I think that's why you make sergeants, for them to make those kind of decisions.
So the problem is if we're going to call this a class 1, then it has to be reported to internal affairs. There can't be mentorship or, hey, don't do that again.
This may require us to sit on it, digest this a little bit more. I mean, I guess this goes to all the other class 2 considerations, frankly. I mean, it's that balance of how do we have optionality, not throw the book and hammer for just simple things that, you know, could be more class 2, more procedural stuff, more coaching opportunities, but also don't open up a window, per what we've been hearing our panel say over and over again, that it creates an opportunity for folks to charge down, I guess. I don't know if I say that right.
Well, I think under the circumstances and under the historical facts we're dealing with, then keep it a class 1. Then it has to go to the, you know, through class one process. And and in that process, there ought to be something you can fast track, that you can say, you know, this was handled appropriately, and we've been made aware of it, and then we have a record of it. Now let's move on. I don't think you have to commit 20 hours of investigation time on something like this.
Yeah. No, you're right.
You know, at some point we got to trust that the Oakland Police Department, Internal Affairs, and its staff structure will do the right thing. And the only way we can do that is by trusting them to do it. But I surely don't want to give them stuff where we are, you know, disciplining people for insignificant, you know, stuff like this. While the same token, we don't want to, you know, continue the culture of looking the other way.
Absolutely.
But you got to trust them, because they are the law enforcement.
What's the range, Captain, for the class one?
The class one, it's 30-day suspension and termination for the first offense. Second offense is termination.
So they get charged with the class one. Let's say we eliminate class two, they get, you know, they have to go through the route of a class one now. Where is the opportunity to say, oh, you know what, it wasn't that bad, it's more of a coaching training, or we don't want to waste too much time on, like, giving that consideration? Because I don't, like, in that example, obviously suspension of 30 days as the starting point would be way too harsh.
Way too harsh.
Well, we would have to change the range, but if what I'm saying is, if we keep it as a class one, there is no other option.
If we combine the two, can we combine the ranges too? So it's from counseling all the way to
Yeah.
termination?
We can combine the ranges, but I guess because it's a class one, we still have to file it. We still have to go through the entire investigation, which I would love for it to be more streamlined, but the reality is just not, it's not the current state we're in right now, because we have so many cases that we're investigating. So it will be about 6 months to a year before this is resolved, if it's a class one.
So we could be looking at a 6-month to a year investigation over loud music being played in the locker room.
That's right. Well, offensive music, but yeah.
Offensive, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You know, and there's no category where instead of 30 days determination, we say it does not meet the standards of this violation. Do you have that category?
We don't, because this is a city policy. If it was an OPD policy, I can just remove it. I can just say this would not be an AI 71 type issue. It's more of just general conduct, if you will, which is a class 2.
So if we leave it as a city policy and we move on, and so that and it's never used, like you said, you don't get that many of them. Then until we can get out of our investigative complaint hole because of the number of complaints you got, then we look at this in 6 months.
Yeah.
If it's a city policy, leave it. How many times does the city bring this kind of charge together?
So OPD is unique, where the city allows us to do our own investigations. They have their own investigative body, but they defer to us. So if we make a complaint for discrimination, the city will just say, okay, OPD, you can handle it. But on their side, I'm not sure, because they do every other city entity in these investigations. I don't know. I'm assuming they probably get some because they actually wrote it in here.
Yeah, okay, probably so. So don't worry about it. Let them handle that thing. Let's go back to dealing with the police department.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't solve it for them.
Yeah, I can just say, like, coming from training, we did get a lot of these, and it had to do with young recruits in the academy saying stupid stuff. You know, they're making jokes, they're saying inappropriate things to other police officer trainees.
Like cooler talk type stuff, just kind of.
Yeah, but you know, like, to me, I mean, we just terminate them like that. That has never been an issue for us because they're probationary employees. They don't have to go through the entire internal affairs process. We would just terminate them. And I would say that's the crux of the majority of our sustained cases that result in severe discipline are those who are probationary. They can't say they didn't know because we covered the first day of the academy. But I'm, I mean, I walk through the locker room. I don't see offensive material in there. I don't see people playing inappropriate or hear people play inappropriate music. I think the culture of OPD has changed to where the jokes people know better. I mean, we've reinforced this many times over.
Excellent. That's excellent.
So that's why I'm not resistant to us making this just a class 1, but then changing the range so it's not just S30 to termination. We have a broad range to where the chief can mitigate as situations come up.
Well, let's operate on that. And I think we've beaten this one to death.
Great. Okay. The next one is conduct towards others' demeanor. This is a very common one. Members and employees shall perform their duties attentively and courteously, avoiding rude, threatening, harsh, insulting, insolent, or demeaning language. And they shall maintain a professional bearing regardless of provocation to do otherwise. Members and employees shall treat superior officers, subordinates, and peers with respect. They shall be courteous and civil at all times in their relationships with one another and shall avoid any inappropriate conduct. All persons except the very youthful and those known personally by the member or employee shall at all times be addressed by their appropriate title followed by their last name. When on duty and in the presence of other superior officers shall be referred to by rank and title. Members and employees shall attend to requests from the public quickly and accurately, avoiding unnecessarily referral to other parts of the department. Orders from superiors to subordinate members and employees shall be given in a civil manner without the use of profane or derogatory language. Okay, so as you can expect, the demeanor, we get a lot of demeanor allegations, and it's centered around rudeness. Okay. Rudeness, and I read every single case that comes through, and I'm probably at least once a week easily, I'm reading a rudeness complaint. Rudeness to me is different than rudeness to supervisor X or Lieutenant Y. So that is the one thing, and I can just tell you that what I'm looking for is this right here. Is like, was the officer or member courteous? Were they rude? Did they threaten? Were they harsh? Were they insulting, insolent, demeaning? I'm looking for all those things, even though it's not really defined well here. And it's close. Like I've had people disagree with me. I'm like, that's rude, and people say no. I had 10 people disagree with me, and maybe I lose in the end. But it is, I would say, challenging because rudeness. That we want our police officers.
All subjective.
It is, but we want our police officers to be stern with people at times. And I'll tell you another one is our dispatchers. So our dispatchers have a policy where if a person is not getting to the point of what the issue is, they're tying up the 911 line. So our dispatchers are instructed to actually hang up on them. They give them warning, like, hey, I'm going to hang up if you don't. Or if the person on the other line is very rude to the dispatcher, the dispatcher gives them warning, hangs up. But that act of hanging up on them comes in as a rudeness complaint. So then it's like, well, should they have hung up? Anyway, we get deep in the weeds of these rudeness complaints. So this is a very heavy section that we use quite often.
Plus, people calling 911 are not on their best behavior. You know, they, it's not a time to consider people using the Queen's English and they're at the calm and courteous at the time. They're usually anxious and using a loud voice and stressed and all of that. So that's a tough one also.
Yeah. So on its face, I don't have many changes to this. Nothing really is confusing here. But if anything jumps off the page that could be fixed, or just let me know.
I surely like that third bullet. That's a great one there. No one likes to run around.
Yeah, and that, I could tell you that bullet point is a struggle too, because the quickly is sometimes not in the control of the actual member who could be on the other end. So I'll
Right.
give you an example. Our investigations division, I mean, we have 3 robbery investigators for a city that has thousands of robberies a year, and so people call in saying, "Hey, I like an update on the case that you're investigating," and the investigator just they can't be quick about it, and and so this is challenging for them. It's like, well, quick to who? Like the just a reasonable quickness to the OPD standard, or is it quick to the person who's actually making a complaint? And what does that really mean? It's tough. Yeah, I have nothing else to offer on this unless you do, but
I don't either.
okay. Just make a note here. Okay. 31408 relationships. Members and employees shall not inappropriately convert or attempt to convert an on-duty contact to an intimate relationship. I know we talked about this before. Um, I do see this. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But we do get these complaints. Not often, but it does happen. So the key word here is inappropriately. And I'll give you an example of what I deem to be inappropriate. I think the I team and the chief agrees with this, but let's say that you're a victim of a crime and I have to take your personal information down. And when you give me your phone number without even asking for permission, then I'm texting and calling you to convert that into a personal, intimate relationship. I mean, the number was given to you for a legitimate law enforcement reason, for a report, not to convert into an intimate relationship. Any disagreement on that? Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear if anyone is talking.
Sorry about that, Cap. I had a family kind of emergency call I had to jump onto real quick, so I missed the last 2 minutes.
All right, well, yeah, we were just talking about conduct towards other relationships. This takes us back to months ago. We were talking about members inappropriately converting or attempting to convert an on-duty conduct into an intimate relationship.
Oh, there's actually
I do see a couple of these a year.
okay. I'm sorry, Captain. I'm getting another call. I'm gonna have to excuse myself for 2 more minutes.
Okay.
You guys go ahead and carry on.
Sure. Deacon Lyles, how do you feel about this?
I I think I've expressed myself enough on this one. I submit. The chief wants it, so let's just leave it.
Yeah, we'll have him review it and see if he has any different opinions on this, but okay. Now the last one for today is 31439. This is a common one. This is body worn camera activation. We did talk about this section in various forms to include Fourth Amendment stuff and plenty of evidence, blah, blah, blah. But specific to an officer failing to activate their body worn camera, it would fall under the fourth bullet point here, failure to perform duties as required or directed by law, department rule, policy, or order. So the reason why this is a standalone manual of rule section is because of the severity of it, right? When we first got body worn cameras, we did have a cultural issue here of officers not activating their body worn camera.
Right.
I mean, I'm actually surprised there's still a lot of agencies in America that still keep it as optional for officers to do it. I'm shocked by that, but I keep hearing stories. So our policy is clear where you have to activate, and we actually issue body worn cameras, at least inert ones in the academy, and we give people just as many reps activating their body worn camera as firing their firearms. So people are very well versed and understand the policy and the need to do it.
Does the public know that?
Well, they should, and we probably should do a better
You
job.
guys should, yeah, you should market that.
Yeah.
That would raise the expectation. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there are some limited exceptions to include like a spontaneous event where the officer's just not in a position to activate if, shots are
with somebody wrestling.
very rare though, because we even go as far as like, don't wait until you're on scene to activate, because who knows what stress you're going to be met when you're there. Do it while you're still driving to the call. And officers are doing a great job. And I review body worn camera a lot, and everyone's doing a great job. We do get a couple of missteps here and there. Sometimes it's inadvertent. I don't know if any of intentional, like failing to activate. But anyway, the point is that it falls under this section, failing to activate their body worn camera. This is somewhat of a catch-all section where if they violate any policy, it kind of falls within this. But the range on this is where is it? Oh, this one right here. It's it starts with the written reprimand all the way to a 5-day suspension, 2-day suspension to a 10-day suspension, and then 10-day suspension to a 30-day suspension. The good thing about this is that I do see officers who do fail, but it's not a pattern. And so unlike class ones, this is a class 2 where a supervisor can mentor someone to do it. And we can rehabilitate them without making a formal internal affairs investigation.
So we could do it with this,
Yes.
but we
Yeah.
can't do it with somebody playing the music loud. That's so illogical.
No, yeah, only because this is a
Right.
class 2. That's right.
Something's not right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I had for today. I mean, we talked a lot about a lot of things. I'm still hung up on this AI 71 stuff, but I'll work on that along with the other things. But we got through 5 today, the class 2s.
Okay.
Know the chair had another call. Mike, are you still on?
I'm here, yes.
How do you feel about ending? I have nothing else to offer for tonight.
Okay, no problem. And you all should see a whole bunch of new invitations that hopefully you can click and it'll appear on your calendar.
Okay, I did get them, so.
Okay,
it did come
and
through.
hopefully that'll work because that's how I did it the very first time. And we'll just go from there. You know, it's fluid, just like this document is. We'll adjust and pivot as we need to.
Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Take care, brother Brian. You guys
Take
be
care.
good.
Nice talking to
Bye-bye.
you.
Good job, you all.
Thank you.